Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, which I'm delighted to speak with you about Greece and the EU residency for 250k property investment opportunity. It really is a fantastic chance to get the EU passport opportunity. And it's an absolute delight to have Rakesh and Rosie from Irish Capital joining me today. Rosie, Rakesh, how are you both?
Hello.
Very well,
Grant.
Grant. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you both too. It's really good to see you both. And I know this is going to be a really insightful presentation today on the golden visa opportunity for Greece. There are a number of opportunities across Europe, across the globe that have now closed for further investment. But really, once you get into the detail here, you will realize it is a very, very good opportunity indeed to get the EU passport, get the golden visa opportunity, and actually invest in a very good underlying asset. So, Marika, let's get into the presentation, please. Okay, so a little bit of background to IP Global first. So I've been with IP Global since 2006. We are a real estate property investment company. We actually do everything in terms of sourcing property, introducing clients for the lawyers, lettings and management, the rental side, and eventually we can sell the asset too. We have transacted on over 3.5 billion US dollars of property investment since we set up, headquartered in Hong Kong, and we have offices across Asia, across China, the Middle East, and we have a big presence here in the UK. Next slide, please, Marika. So just sort of stepping back a bit, as I mentioned there, we have invested for nearly 2 decades now, so we have tremendous experience in terms of property investing. For example, here in the UK, we manage over 6,000 properties for our clients. We actually invest our own money, and that's critical because when we present opportunities, we will clearly outline the investment case, the other projects we've looked at, and you can be sure that we've invested in sound opportunities for our global investors. And because of this underwrite model, typically that we have, whatever we don't sell by completion, we have to buy ourselves. So we do not do many projects, and we are very, very selective on the opportunities that we present. Where we're investing this year is across the UK, across Germany, Portugal, and of course, we have the golden visa opportunity here for Greece that we're going to focus on today. Next slide, please, Marika. Okay, right. So it's a pleasure to have Rakesh from Irish Capital. Just a bit of background to Irish Capital in terms of our relationship. We've been working with Irish for many years now, and the products that they've brought to market have served our clients very well, and we're delighted to be working with them again for this opportunity in Greece, which actually has launched very, very strongly indeed. So it's an opportune time to present this to our investors and really talk about the solid investment case for Greece and obviously the benefits associated with the golden visa and ultimately the passport opportunity. So Rakesh, let me hand over to you, without further ado, I'll let you carry on.
Okay, thank you, Grant. And it's a pleasure to be with you guys again. As you mentioned, there's quite a lot of detail to run through on this particular investment opportunity in Greece, which is indeed golden visa eligible. And this presentation will hopefully act as somewhat of a guide for those people that are perhaps looking at this for the first time or have started to look at this and want to go over some of those details. The presentation itself is broken down into 3 parts. So we have, first and foremost, an overview of the country of Greece for those of you who haven't been there, understanding a little bit about the economy, the government, the real estate market. The other part, the second part, is about the golden visa program, what the conditions are to access it, and what are the benefits of having this type of investment. And then finally, we land on our recently launched development in Greece, which is a student accommodation facility actually, but indeed is Golden Visa eligible. So that will be sort of the checkpoints that we'll have through this. It will last around 30 minutes. But if we go to the next slide, if I can just perhaps give a little bit more detail about Irish Capital, who we are and what we do. Obviously, Grant, we've been working together now for a number of years. For those of that you have dialed in, Irish is a real estate investment and development company. We've been going now for 13 years. We have our offices in London. That is indeed where our head office is, in Dubai, which is actually where I sit in the sales and operations team. We also have an office in Lisbon that looks after all of our Portuguese investments. And we recently opened now an office in Athens. Just to give you an idea of the type of investments that we've been doing in the last 13 years or so, very much focused on the UK market for the first 7 years. And indeed, we continue to be active there. But when Brexit got announced around 5.5, 6 years ago, we our European footprint. In the UK, we became very well known for some of the commercial projects that we did, including lots of student accommodation. Many of those we went on to sell institutionally, others we continue to sit as part of our own income portfolio. Portugal and Greece have become a bigger part in our investing strategy, particularly Portugal. We've now been active on the ground there for the last 5.5 years. We've had over 14 developments in the Golden Visa space. We also have non-Golden Visa investments. And in the Golden Visa space, there's well over 500 investors. So I think we have a pretty good handle on sort of these types of investment, and it allows us to sort of speak to the pros and cons that do come with looking at these types of investments. And hopefully we'll touch upon all of that. We go to the next slide. It's just a snapshot of some of our prior developments. All of these are now fully built, delivered, and indeed some of these are all, actually they're all fully sold out. So just to give you an idea of our track record, we obviously have some materials that we can send after the call as well. Now on the next slide, I think it's best to deal with the sort of why type of question immediately. That is to say, well, why would you be investing in real estate? Why with Irish, perhaps? And importantly, why would you be considering the Golden Visa for perhaps you and your family? Now, I think on the real estate question, IP Global is expert in this. We ourselves have a view on the market, but I think it's fair to say that real estate as an asset class is the largest asset class in the world, bigger than the equities market, bigger than the bonds market. And one metric that I always like to throw out there, because I think it resonates with many people, if you'd invested $10,000 40 years ago, the value of that $10,000 today in real estate would be $244,000. If you compare that to equities, it's $190,000, and to bonds, $48,000. So I think that in and of itself tells a story that real estate is a flight to safety, flight to quality, and continues to offer those growth opportunities. In terms of why Irish, well, I've touched upon some of our experience. Hopefully, Grant can also tell you about some of his past investors that have come on board with us. And I'm going to be talking about our recently launched student accommodation project in Greece and why we feel it's particularly well placed, especially with the economy being at this interesting inflection point that it is. And we'll come on to speak about that. I think the third question is why Golden Visa? And I think many people have heard this term bandied about, perhaps don't know exactly what it is. I do think it's becoming, or it was rather, the new luxury item, but it's now becoming more of a necessity for more and more people. Yes, it gives you rights for visa-free travel within the Eurozone, but it also offers, perhaps more importantly, some safety insurance for you and your family, particularly if you're living in countries that may unfortunately be facing some geopolitical instability. I think the next slide is a short video that we're going to play, which unfortunately highlights the amount of items that are on the 2024 list that perhaps the world is worried about, and also perhaps reinforces why you may want to do this thing called the Golden Visa. So if we play this short video and then we'll go into the detail. Thanks, Mariko.
The world is a different place today. Tonight, Donald Trump's historic victory in Iowa as the 2024 presidential primary race moves on to New Hampshire.
A slowdown in international trade, soaring debt levels, high inflation and high interest rates. What lies ahead for the global economy in 2024?
The signs of a looming recession in 2024 are pretty clear.
It's day 104 of the war in Gaza.
Tensions were already high in the Middle East as the war between Israel and Hamas rages. Well, now Iran and Pakistan have launched missiles at one another.
The conflict advances every minute. Recently, Vladimir Putin's interests have been attacked.
China says Marcos's message violates the One China principle and Manila's political commitment to Beijing.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. I'm your news reporter, John Baker, with this just-in breaking news. War, politics, economic challenges, and natural disasters preoccupy the global elite. 2024 has started with the longest list of potential disruptions. What's going to happen? Nobody knows. Protecting yourself against this cocktail of disruption is no longer just a choice. It's a reality. And some would say, an absolute must for governments, for corporations, and today, for families too. Borders that were once welcoming are now protectionist and closing.
A lot of uncertainty about what is ahead.
So right now, the world economy is said to be at something of an inflection point.
It's a rethinking of globalization and to some extent of regionalization, and it changes everything.
A solution for this fractured world? Probably there is not. A protection? Mobility. Mobility for you and your family is essential. Mobility is the hedge against uncertainty and the key to freedom. Freedom is your power, your right, your choice, without asking for permission. There is no time to postpone decisions. Stay safe. Set yourself free.
So the next slide, I think I just want to summarize that because unfortunately that video does highlight the menu of items that perhaps people might be worried about across the world. And I think that it is true to say that mobility does offer you choice and freedom. And whilst at the same time that sort of driver is going up, what is actually happening is that territories are indeed closing down. Borders are becoming stronger and tighter and more difficult to access. So in the last couple of years, at least, the UK has closed its residency program. Australia, the same. Ireland, the same. Portugal had a very strong real estate offering, which is now closed. Malta's under attack. And Greece, i.e. the very one that we're going to be talking about today, is now considering its minimum investment threshold from 250 to 500, and therefore making it harder to act. So I think with that as the overall sort of theme and landscape that we are facing, if you have been thinking about these types of things, this is not really marketing speak. It really is becoming more and more of a timely thing to be thinking about. So on that note, let me pass you over to Rossi, and she's going to start with an explanation of what the Golden Visa Program is, in particular in Greece, and how you can access it. So Rossi, over to you.
Thank you, Rag. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, good evening, depending where you're connected from. Marika, we can go to the next slide. We talk about all the challenges around us, but I'm going to now dedicate the next few minutes to discuss on the opportunity that still the Golden Visa program in Greece is open, and is open at its lowest price point possible, which is 250,000 euros. So if we move to the next slide to see what are the details of the program, one of the major and most important things is that it's a program that has been running for 10 years already, 2013. But for those that are not familiarized with the Golden Visa, what is the difference that has this program against any other residency that can immigration of any country offer? The biggest benefit that the Golden Visa has against anything else is that it will allow you to have the right of reside on the country, but not the obligation. You will not need to relocate. So this is a residency by investment. By the investment in a property, you will have the right to reside in the country of Greece and some other benefits that we will go through, but you will not have the obligation to relocate. It has already issued more than 31,000 permits with a total of almost 3 billion euros investment. We can reunify 3 generations, and this is very important because one single investment of 250,000 euros will take us to 3 generations. We are going to see in the next slide what are those requirements or the criteria for the 3 generations. But before that, let me take you also through the process. What will be the process? What will be the document that you will be required to submit? It is a document-based process, which means that everything that you will need to present is objective. There is no need for a personal interview. There is no need for proof of funds. All we will have to present is a valid passport and the proof of having invested in the country in an eligible property, 250,000 euros. In addition to this, there is American insurance that we will have to apply for, and this is a bridge that will open the doors to the public in healthcare in Greece. Very important. It is a very minimal cost, around 150 to 300 euros annually, but is what will allow us to access one of the biggest benefits, which is the public healthcare of the country. With these documents, only these 3, we will be able to submit our application and have the issuance of the golden visa, the residency, for 5 years. In 5 years' time, I will have no obligation to visit the country, so I can spend as much time as I want. This can be home for me, if that's what I choose to, but it's also possible not to visit at all. I will have to renew my residency in 5 years, and the criteria will be the same. Continue holding the property and continue to have my medical insurance. So that's all I will need to do. This is a program that will be linked to the property, so I will have to own that property for long term. What are the benefits that are being granted with at the moment that the card is issued? First thing we spoke is how many family members will be reunified with me. Main applicant, a spouse, the kids under the age of 21, the parents, and the parents-in-law of the main applicant. So there is no limit in family members. It can be 3, it can be 10, it can be 15, depending on how many kids every family has. But the most important is this criteria in terms of the age and the links in between the members. All of them will have the right to live in Greece, as we spoke, but also to study and to access the healthcare, the public healthcare in Greece. One of the biggest also benefits, as we've seen in the video, is mobility. It will give us the possibility to travel in the Schengen zone with no visa. So I will be able to go to the airport, only hold my residency card, and travel to any of the countries member of the Schengen zone. Before we go to the cost and the process, etc., one question that we are asked continuously is, what is the impact of the taxes? Having the residency card does not make me tax resident in the country. If I don't relocate, I will continue to have my taxes paid and due in my home country. And this is something very important. The only taxes I will be paying in Greece is over any income that I generate in Greece. Today, we will introduce a real estate project with rental income, and that rental income would have to be taxed in Greece, only that. Next slide, please, Marit. So what is the cost of the program? I have to do the investment in the property. There are some taxes attached to it that we will see in detail, but the government fees are actually quite little as compared to other programs. The main applicant will be paying 2,016 euros for the issuance of the card, and for the renewal every 5 years, the same amount. Every family member that I reunify is 166 euros. And the medical insurance, as we said, is around 150 euros. It may vary depending on the age, and that is paid annually. So for a family of 4, which is the typical family that would be applying, is around 3,100 euros. Depending on the family members, we can adapt this and we can customize but it will be only adding around 160 euros per family member. So if we go to the next slide, we can see the cost at a global, not only including the government cost, but also including the taxes that I have to pay on the acquisition. When I buy a property, there are a few items to look after. One is the price of the property. In this case, 250,000 euros. I will have to furnish it if I need to rent it. We provide that furniture as a furniture pack for every item to be able to rent it next day. And this is a cost of 10,000 euros. There are some taxes, as we said, that is 14,850. And then the government fees, which we just went through, 3,114. The total investment is around 278,000 euros. But it's important that we remember this table and this amount, because we are going to go back to it after the project for the launch promotion. And for those that are attending the webinar, there is a special promotion to some of these items that Aris would be taking care of. Can we go to the next slide, please, Marika? Okay, so until now, we talk about the golden visa, and that's extra benefit that the investment in the country of Greece can give us with the residency. But it's very important that we also focus on the investment itself, what I can expect of the country, how stable it is at the moment. I think everyone had in mind what happened during the crisis and after it. And it is a very difficult country, a different country today, and I want to take you through some of the main items. It is, of course, a democracy since 1974, European Union member 1981, one of the first ones to join. And as we said, healthcare system is one of the top. So if I'm going to have the benefit of accessing the healthcare system, very important to note that it's a very high quality. Geographically has a very strategic point. So it's connecting 3 continents. And this is something that we can see many multinationals that are choosing to be located there for that purpose. In the next slide, we see some very important also information regarding the economy. If we move, please, Marika, to the next slide. The economy has been recovering for the last few years, and one of the reasons why we can see this recovery and why the trust in the country has actually grown exponentially in the last 2-3 years is because of the government and the prime minister. The prime minister in power that is being just re-elected is an ex-banker, ex-Harvard, and a very pro-business person that has been promoting the country internationally to the point that we have a very impressive increase of the foreign direct investment of 74% in 2021. It's also important to mention that internationally, from an institution point of view, there is a big trust in the country. One of the reasons because the debt to the European Union was fully paid and ahead of time, but also because recently there is a big issuance of bonds that was oversubscribed by 13 billion. When we look into who is investing in Greece, is not only in the next slide, we see not only the institutions, but also big multinationals. America, we can go, thank you. So as of today, we can see that GDP that was declined after the crisis on over 25% is now recovering in every industry of the economy, from the tourists to the infrastructure development, to the banking, and through the real estate. And that's what we are going to see a little bit more detail in the next slides. If we move now to the next slide, we see how is the real estate market behaving. Michael, we can move now to the real estate part. Thank you. Next one, please. So when we see any of the reports that are issued at European level, any of the big consultancies in the industry, Greece is #1 country for the attractiveness in that capital appreciation. And one of the reasons is because we've seen already, and we can see that in next slide, we've seen already that for the last two years, we've had appreciations from 4 to 11%, of course, depending on the location, but that in an average level. But it still continue, please, Marika, to the next slide. It still continues 30% below what it was before 2008 and 2009, before the crisis. This is what is telling us that we are at the right time. The government is stable, the economy is growing, there is big trust from the international countries, but it's still undervalued to where the country should be. And this is why, for us, if we move to the next slide, the message is this is the right time to invest in Greece. So with all of these, hopefully you got a little bit of information about the country and the Golden Visa program. We are going to now focus on the project. Over to you, Rak.
Okay, so checkpoint. I think we've learned a little bit about the country of Greece, the economy, the real estate. We've also learned about the Golden Visa program, what it is, what the benefits are, and how you can access it. This is now indeed the last part of the presentation where we talk about our newly launched development, which is a student accommodation facility. Just a few words as an overview on this. As you probably understood from Rossi, that actually your permanent residency rights in Greece are retained so long as you continue to own property in Greece. And so this is very much a curated product. And why do I say that? It's because those people that are investing primarily driven by Golden Visa ambitions will be looking to hold an asset for quite some time in order to retain their permanent residency. And therefore, whilst exit liquidity is always something to think about when you're entering into a real estate investment, what is perhaps more important if you're going to be holding it for a particularly long period of time is income. And that is why we've chosen a student accommodation facility. Student numbers continue to grow across the world, and therefore the stability in rents and income gives you that certainty. But equally, if at some point you change your mind and you don't want to have or retain your permanent residency, selling an asset that is income producing is always easier than selling something that is not. So that's the sort of hypothesis that we've entered into this particular development in Greece. And if we go to the first slide, Marika, I'll give you a quick overview of the exact location. So we are located in the city of Patra, which is in fact the third largest city in Greece. It's about 2.5 hours driving distance to Athens, so not very far. Population of just over 200,000. Now, what is Patra known for? It's actually known primarily because it's a university town, in excess of 35,000 students. 3 of the leading and highly ranked universities within Greece are located in Patra as well. It also, you can see from the background picture, like much of Greece, does have still an active shipping port. So a little bit of that coastline is dedicated to the port activity. So as a microeconomy, it's got 2 things there, which is A, students, and B, the shipping activity. If we go to the next slide, in terms of the exact location of our asset, it's called Wonderwall. And Wonderwall is located in that red highlighted building, which is around 4 minutes walk from the beach. It is already an existing building of just under 3,000 square meters. And we are going to be renovating it into a student accommodation facility. It will be opening doors in September 2025. We expect the renovation to be complete, given that the building already exists, etc., by around July 2025. But the doors will open in line with the academic year in September 2025. Once renovated, it will be 56 individual studio apartments and 1 commercial unit. Importantly, every single investor that comes in, they will have their own individual title deed. So it's a full freehold asset. And therefore it's the strongest form of legal title that you can have. Now, on the basis that this is going to be fully managed and therefore passive for investors, it also comes with the benefit of a 15-year operating and management lease. And that means that there will be a specialist student accommodation provider and operator who will be handling all of the facility, which makes life a lot easier for those investors that want this to be a very convenient type of investment. And like many student accommodation facilities these days, unlike when I was at university, they are now very modern. So we will have on-site gyms, laundry rooms, rooftop gardens. So very much like a sort of mini boutique hotel. In terms of the investment opportunity, and perhaps some of you may be asking, well, why would I invest in student accommodation? I've sort of touched upon that already, primarily because student accommodation is an asset that has really come from the US around 30 years ago, very much an institutional grade asset there. Then that trend migrated to the UK. I already mentioned that we've done several of these projects in the UK and indeed sold them institutionally. Southern Europe is still far behind in terms of that developmental curve, and countries like Portugal, Spain, and indeed Greece are now ripe development in that Greece alone has 700,000 students. I've already mentioned in Patra there's 35,000 students, but only one purpose-built student accommodation facility which houses 90 beds. So from a supply and demand perspective, this asset very much fits into what we would want for this type of development. Now, looking at sort of a simple timeline, I mentioned that there's a 15-year operating lease. So the investor comes in at year 0 with the investment amount of 250,000. And for the first 5 years, there's also certainty on income in that there's a rental guarantee at 5% for each one of those 5 years. And thereafter, it will move to a market rate of return are paying between years 6 and 15. The investors will receive their share of. Again, just a reminder to everyone, this is not a co-ownership. This is individual title deeds over your individual apartments. So if we go to the next slide, I just want to touch upon a little bit more about the location. I've mentioned we're 4 minutes walk from the beach. We're about 10 to 15 minutes walk from the university campuses, 4 minutes from the supermarket, 7 minutes from the train station. Patra also has its own domestic airport, which also carries some limited European airlines. And then obviously the main international airport is within Athens, which is about 2.5 hours drive. So everything that students would want, or put differently, everything that parents sending their children away to university would want, this town very much has. If we go to the next slide, for those of you that might be curious of what the building currently looks like in its existing format, there it is, it's circled there. We're about 4 minutes walk from that lovely marina where you have any number of sort of restaurants and hotels, etc. It's a really nice location. If you go to the next slide, Marika, we'll show you what the building will look like post the renovation. And if we continue through moving in these slides, Marika, we'll show you what the building looks like because it is very modern. You can see lots of communal spaces on the upcoming slides. You'll see the gym, the laundry rooms, the rooftop gardens. If you go to the next slide, Marika. And again. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see here the individual studio rooms. They all have their own ensuite facilities, obviously, kitchens, and they all have some sort of outside space, whether it's a terrace on the upper floors or a garden on the lower ground floors, simply to take advantage of the beautiful location that we're in. We are, after all, in Greece by the beach, and so there's lots of sunshine hours to take advantage of. So if we go to the next slide, Marie-Claire, and again. Now, I want to touch upon a little bit about who the operator is here, because in order for this to be a purely passive investment, it really does rely upon who that operator is. Now, we're real estate investors and developers. We're good at finding assets, building them. And in the UK, for example, if we built a hotel, we would never operate it. We'd get a Hilton in to come in and operate it. In the student accommodation world, there are specialist student accommodation operators. And for us here, we've chosen a company called Hamlet, which is a specialist student accommodation operator. They come from the UK, but they also now have a number of years' experience within Greece. They have active operations in Sparti, in Athens. And remember, I said that there was one other student accommodation facility in Patra with 90 beds. They also operate that. So not only do they have a wealth of experience, they also have a good amount of experience in the micro location. So I think that really does speak to making this a truly passive type of investment. We go to the next slide, Marika. This really is just to try and bring all of this together. So the investment opportunity is in an asset class that we believe is very severely undersupplied, i.e. student accommodation in a student town. It's golden visa eligible at 250,000. It produces that all-important income. And for the first 5 years, you also have certainty of income at that 5%. It also benefits from this management and operating lease, making it very convenient for those investors that are looking for that type of investment. And then finally, coming back to student accommodation and just generally the Greek market, Rossi touched upon this. Greece continues to be between 20 and 30% undervalued from where it was at the financial crisis peak in 2008. So we still feel there'll be that pull to par. but you're also invested in an asset class that we believe is just going to continue to grow. Now, I want to end on one last point, which is the promotion that we have whenever we launch a new development. And perhaps if I just go to the next slide, it will illustrate the benefit of that promotion. So through the slide on the top right-hand side, you can see the main categories of costs which you would have to pay if you were to embark on one of these types of investments. But as part of the promotion, which is valid until the end of this month, we would be covering the furniture pack cost as well as the acquisition taxes. So it's a saving of just around 25,000 euros, moving that cost point from what Rossi was showing originally at 277,000 down to 253,000. So, as I say, a significant saving of around 25,000 euros. We have in total 56 apartments to sell, and we've now taken 32 bookings. So I think indeed, for some investors, that promotion has been quite meaningful, and hence the reason why we've gone past that 50% mark in such a short space of time in terms of bookings. So with all that said, and I appreciate that's a lot of information, we did promise that it was going to be information packed, but Grant, maybe if I can pass it back to you and you can perhaps try and open this up to the floor and Q&As, etc.
Yeah, absolutely, Rakesh. And look, thanks for that, for yourself and Rosie. Really good overview. I think there's some very interesting points there that you raise. I mean, particularly in terms of Greece, timing seems perfect from an investment perspective. When you look at the fact it was so late recovering from the financial crisis, and there is a lot of value in the market, which of course you covered there with the fact that, you know, sort of property prices are still about sort of 30% off. So in terms of a timing perspective, in terms of investing in Greece, it seems like now is definitely that time. And I think so often with these sort of visa opportunities, people look at the, as I mentioned earlier, look at the actual visa passport opportunity, but they don't necessarily focus on the underlying asset. And I think the fact is, what you've put across there is an extremely strong case for Greece, where it is in terms of the economic recovery, but also the asset itself. And as you know, IP Global within the group of companies has been very positive on the student accommodation sector. You know, we've been investing in this asset class for many years now, and we are, in line with yourselves that we are very bullish on this asset class. And of course, with Patra there, clearly it is an undersupply story with the fact that 30-odd thousand students, only 90 beds currently, and here's another 52 to the market. So yeah, very strong asset case. And I think the other thing I'd pick up from your presentation is the fact that when you look at those fees, the legal fees are a fraction of what they are in many other countries where they've presented this type of opportunity.
Yes, indeed. I think you're right. And the comparison on that last point regarding legal fees, Portugal was a very popular program for golden visa related investments. But yes, you're right, Grant, the legal fees and just generally the fees paid to the immigration authorities were fivefold for what they were here or what they are here in Greece. So very economical in that respect.
Yes, yeah. Well, look, we've got a lot of questions that have come through, so I just want to focus on some of the key ones with you both. First question here is, what is the expected timeline for becoming a golden visa holder once becoming invested?
Okay, so to take everyone through the process from the very beginning, if any of the clients in the audience would be joining the project and investing with us, the first thing they would do is to sign a reservation agreement. Reservation agreement has attached a deposit of 10,000 euros, which is actually a down payment of the property. Once that is completed and the property is taken off the market, they will directly engage with the lawyers. The lawyers will take approximately 1 month to complete some paperwork that is necessary, such as a power of attorney, a tax number, etc. Everything done remotely and guided by the lawyers. Once that is in place, that it takes 30, 45 days, they we will be in a position to sign the deeds. We will transfer the ownership of the property to the client, and they will be able to obtain their title deed, which is necessary for submission. So if we were doing the reservation today, we could consider that the submission of the application of Golden Visa would happen in a total of 60 days from today. Once the application is done, the lawyers would invite the clients to choose the date for the biometrics. Every month there are open, the appointments for the month after are opening, and depending on the availability of the clients, they can book. So once they have booked the appointment, we very much recommend that the biometrics are done in a smaller town, somewhere with lower population, because they are much quicker. And if that is the case, we could expect that from the time that is done the biometrics, there is 2 to 4 months to obtain the Golden Visa residency card. This is also remotely, and the lawyers would be sending their cards by courier. So the only time that the clients would visit Greece is for the biometrics. And it's a total of around 6 months from beginning to the end if they choose to do the biometrics in a smaller population, because immigration is much faster.
Thank you, Rosie. So that's actually quite a short timeline from beginning to end. So that does make it very attractive.
It is.
Okay, next question here. Who from my family can be included to apply for a golden visa under one single investment of 250,000 euros?
So this is one of the biggest benefits, that is 3 generations. I can reunify a spouse, of course, but also the kids that are under the age of 21, and the parents-in-law. Parents and parents-in-law can be any age, 40, 50, 80. They have no criteria on that. And there is no limit on number of members. So 3 generations, spouse, kids, and the parents and parents-in-law.
Great, okay. Next question, do investors need to open a Greek bank account or obtain or obtain police clearances from their home country?
Mm-hmm. And I probably understand this question, someone that is being very familiar with other programs such as Portugal, that it was a little bit more complex in that sense.
Yeah.
Greece is straightforward. I can do the payment from my home country. Very important, it has to be an account on my name in a traditional bank, because that is a document that will need to be required. But I don't need to open an account in Greece. I will do it from my home country or whatever are my savings directly to the seller, to us, in our account in Greece. We will issue the certificate of payment and show that those funds were coming from the investor from abroad, which is necessary. So no bank account is required. Police clearance is also not required. So all we need, as a reminder, is a valid passport with a minimum validity of 3 months and the proof of having done my investment in addition to my medical insurance.
Okay, so it certainly lessens the bureaucracy, and I suppose that's why there's a shorter timeline that we're talking about here than many other visa opportunities. Would that be right?
Yes, very right.
Yeah, okay. Next question, important one. Do I become taxable in Greece on my country of origin income by becoming a PR holder in Greece?
You don't, but do you want to respond on this, Rag?
Yeah, look, I think this is a very important question, and perhaps some people on this journey, they think of it a little bit belatedly. But I do think it's important to flag it up front, and it's a positive thing. The first thing is to say, by becoming a legal resident of Greece, which is what this would give you if you became invested and obtained the golden visa, a legal resident, does not make you a tax resident of Greece. And so what does that mean practically? That means that actually the only income that will be taxed in Greece is your Greek source income. So if you own a property such as this one and you receive rental income, which you will, then that is taxed in Greece. And Greece operates under a progressive tax system. And at the moment, the progressive tax rates for this type of income is around 15%. So only your Greek source income is taxed. Put differently, any of your home country income, wherever it is that you live, will not suddenly become taxable in Greece.
Right. Okay. Are there any additional benefits or incentives available to golden visa holders? Access to healthcare, education, employment opportunities?
Yes, so healthcare is, and Greece does have a very highly ranked healthcare system. And going back to some of the conditions to obtain your Greek golden visa, we touched upon this insurance requirement. That insurance requirement, which is a de minimis number, is actually a bridge so that if you wanted to, you can access all of the public healthcare within Greece. So you do have that benefit and advantage, and also your children are able to attend Greek schooling, but by and large, as you might expect, many of the Greek schools are in Greek language, but they have a whole host of international schools as well, which are indeed English language.
Okay. Any language proficiency requirements for applicants to the GV program? Of course, we know that that's the case in other countries.
Sorry, Grant, the line cut there. Rusty,
Yeah,
did you hear that? Do you want to take that
Yeah,
one?
just to repeat that for you.
Yes.
Are there any language proficiency requirements for applicants to this GV program? We, of course, know that there
Not
is
for
that
residency.
in other countries. Yeah.
Yes, not for residency. Residency does not require any language test. Different thing is the citizenship, but for the residency, this is not required.
Right. Okay. Okay. Are there any restrictions on nationality of applicants for the scheme?
And not at all. European Union that they do have at the moment with Russian nationality, but
Yeah.
every other nationality is not restricted.
Okay. Lots and lots of questions, actually. The next one is there any sort of particular challenges or obstacles for the application? Of course, we've talked about, a lot of schemes have quite onerous requirements. I mean, from what I'm observing, it's quite a straightforward application. I mean, is that something you would agree with?
Yes. It's very smooth. And let's say that the most complex could be the property purchase. But in this case, because we do have the experience with many clients that are from abroad and how things have to be prepared for the due diligence, we have everything set and to be ready to be shared with the client's lawyers. So within, as we said, 30 days, we are fully ready to have the deed signed, which I think that is much, much shorter than in many other countries. Yeah,
no, I totally agree with that. That's definitely the case from the schemes that I'm aware of. And I think, just two more questions. I'm conscious we're coming up to not far close to the hour mark. So ongoing management costs, someone has asked here, what's the current market rental yield for the investment that we're talking about?
Yeah, so obviously we've surveyed the market, we've looked at the supply and demand imbalance, and the fact that we're underwriting at 5% speaks to how confident we feel, because obviously for us to underwrite at 5%, we must be earning a little bit more. So I think the yields are by and large where we are going to be opening them up, but I think in post the 5-year rental guarantee, with inflation the way it is at the moment, and just generally increases in prices, even if inflation settles, we would still there expect to be a 6% return post the 5 years, and that would be post all of the management fees. One of the things that you must, or investors must be mindful of, is that when owning a property, particularly a freehold property, there are costs attached to it. And one of the ones that we would have in this particular building from year 6 for investors are the management fees. And the purpose of the management fees is obviously to take care of the building, the common areas, the building insurances, etc. And we expect them to be about 150 euros per month per investor. So that's one thing to keep in mind. There are those management fees that you would have in any freehold property, and indeed it would apply here, but only from year 6.
Okay. And final question here. Someone is asking, is there urgency here with the Greece scheme? Of course, the questioner asked the fact that a lot of schemes have closed down. Some are muted to be sort of shutting down quite soon. So is there an urgency for Greece and this opportunity?
Look, I think that perhaps the start of the presentation, we tried to highlight this. Whilst there's all these things going around the world causing the demand for these types of products to go up, there is the definite drive by the EU to close these programs down, tighten the borders, etc. And we've seen evidences of that in reality over the last 2 years. So is there an urgency? Well, I guess that's sort of in the eye of the beholder in some respects, but these programs will close down. Greece is already under discussion to make the filter to access the program a little bit harder by increasing the amount from 250 to 500. I know one of the questions that came up was, well, what happens if they increase the price after I've invested? The good news is that if you invest under the law as it currently is, you become grandfathered and therefore you're protected. So your rights are not affected post a change of law, provided you've made your investment. So another reason why perhaps you want to think about these things hastily is just because you want to make sure you get your foot in the door before either it gets too narrow or indeed it just closes.
Okay, all right, that sounds very sound advice in light of the ongoing discussions, as you say, with regard to the high level with the EU and potentially closing these schemes, and of course with Greece perhaps increasing the amount. So it's something for potential investors to be aware of at this time. So look, that's I think as far as we'll go today. Obviously, we've had a lot of questions, and there are others that I will answer online afterwards. Rosie, Rakesh, is there any sort of closing parts you'd like to go through or recap on?
Rosie, what do you add to close?
Just to say that we are fully available for any questions, and I think that if any of you has wants to have an individual discussion with us, we are available to do that, and Grant will coordinate with us. And that has been a pleasure to be today with everyone.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, Rakesh. Yeah, I think just in summary, I think for those who are keen to look at this asset, the timing is perfect in many respects in terms of the market and obviously in terms of the opportunity. And as I say, do bear in mind the fact that the special offer that's valid until the 29th of February. So effectively two weeks today, that offer will finish, and that is quite a considerable saving for the investment here. So, look, without further ado, I'd just like to thank you for your attendance. And so we've had a good audience today for this opportunity. If you have further questions, if you've got further information you need, do drop me a line. And of course, I can reconnect with Rosie and Rakesh at the right time to go into this in more detail. But all that remains me to say is, Rosie, Rakesh, thank you very much indeed for sharing your time today. I know that you're very busy. You've been doing a lot of traveling and continue to do so as the opportunity is taken up. So really appreciate you making the time. And thank you all for attending the webinar today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.